Hello and welcome to Lesson 37 in our Saxon Math series. Lesson 37 begins on page 165. If you haven't done so already, I would encourage you to get out your math notebook and to be ready to take some notes. We have one learning target for today, and that's being able to read fractions and mixed numbers from a numbered line. And if you were here earlier, we did mixed numbers on lesson 34, I think it was. So if you're not sure what a mixed number is, let me just remind you. A mixed number is a whole number, like 2, and a fraction, like 1/3. Okay, so this whole thing right here is called a mixed number. And we're going to practice reading them on a number line. So in your math book, they have very nicely, I think, given you a very clear set of directions on how you do it. And so we first count the number of segments between consecutive whole numbers. Consecutive just means one right after the other. All right, so let's stop and pause and think for a minute. What does that mean? First, count the number of segments between consecutive whole numbers. So here's a whole number, here's a whole number, there's a whole number, and they're consecutive because they're in order, 5, 6, 7. They're one right after the other. And so we're going to count the number of segments we have. This is a segment right there. That's one segment. Let me use different colors so it really shows up. This is another segment, so that's 2. And this is a third segment because we have to stop because here's a whole number. So that's 3. There are 3 segments. So segments are really right here like this. Don't um, get them confused with the tick marks. Count the area, if you will. So I have 3. So I'm going to put a 3 as my denominator because that's how many parts I have in my whole. And I'm going to put a 5 as my whole number because the arrow is pointing between the 5, but it hasn't made it to 6 yet. It's kind of like I'm 5 years old, but you can't say you're 6 yet because you haven't had your 6th birthday. So even though your 5th birthday was like 10 months ago, well, you have to wait until the actual day of your birthday before you can say, oh, it's my 6th birthday. So if you'll notice, the arrow is pointing, let me get rid of that, between the 5 and the 6. So you have to say that your whole number is 5. So we would write 5 as my whole number. And as I said earlier, the 3 is my denominator. And then the next part is to count the tick marks. Okay, so that's this part right here. There's 1 and there's 2. So it's 5 and 2/3. And you can kind of make sense of that because if you think about it, there are 1, 2, 3 segments, but the arrow is right after 1 and 2, 2 of them. So it's 5 and 2/3. So let's practice that with 2 examples here. We have A and we have B. So remember, count your segments first. That's the very first thing. Actually, you know what? I disagree with the book. I would think it would be easier to find your whole number first. Let me extend this page. Come here, you. I need some working room. Exactly. So I would say the first thing you do is decide your whole number. And so we have 17 and 18. The arrow is between 17 and 18. Well, you haven't turned 18 yet. It hasn't made it to 18. So you have to go with 17 as your whole number. So you would write 17. Then the next thing you do is going to count the segments. And you know, this is the trickiest part simply because you have to really be able to see it. So I'm fortunate enough I can zoom in And now I can go through and count my segments starting at 17. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 segments in all here. So that's my denominator. And then to find my numerator, that's the tick line or the tick mark that the arrow is pointing at. I have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, let me touch them. 1, 2, 3. So 3 is my numerator. If you think about it, I have 1, 2, 3. 3 segments past the 17, or 3 segments out of 5. So my mixed number is 17 and 3/5. Let's scooch over and look at this other example. What's my whole number? Well, the arrow is between the 36 and the 37, but it hasn't made it to 37 yet. Here's the 37 tick mark, and the arrow hasn't made it there. So my whole number is 36. Now I count the segments to find my denominator. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 segments, so that's my denominator. And now I count the tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 5 is my numerator. And that's how you do it. So just take it step by step. First your whole number, then your denominator, then your numerator. You'll get it in no time. Remember, quitters never learn, and learners never quit.